Hey guys, tonight we step into a river world before the river has decided what name it wants on the map. Dawn hangs low over the Indus plains, soft and silver, and you stand where damp earth smells like clay, cattle breath, wood smoke, tunity, and yesterday's floodwater politely refusing to leave. Ahead, walls of fired brick glow through the fog. Streets wait in straight lines. Somewhere a potter turns a wheel, a dog judges everybody. Tunity in a canal carries the morning away without asking for applause. You probably won't survive this, mostly because ancient drainage is impressive, but ancient customer service is not. So before you get comfortable, Tunity, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you settle in, post your location and your local time, because it is comforting to know where the modern world is drifting from tonight. Now, Tunity, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You move forward through the mist. You are simply a traveler barefoot in your imagination. Tunity following the smell of wet brick toward a civilization that enters history quietly, like someone opening a door before sunrise. The ground is cool beneath you. Fine grit clings to your feet. The fog thins. Tunity in a city assembles itself from muted-shaped square corners, raised platforms, lanes that meet at angles so clean they seem almost modern. You are used to ancient cities being messy, loud, heroic, and slightly flammable. Here, Tunity, the first thing you notice is order. More like someone planned where the wastewater goes, which many modern apartment blocks still treat as optional. Fired bricks rise in patient rows, measured, baked, Tunity, and laid in patterns that repeat across settlements separated by enormous distances. A mainstream historical fact rests right there in the wall beside you. The Indus Valley Civilization, also called the Harappan Civilization, flourished roughly from 2600 to 1900 BCE across parts of what are now Pakistan, northwest India, and nearby regions. It was one of the great Bronze Age civilizations, standing beside Egypt and Mesopotamia, but with a quieter personality. Tunity, like the sibling who says little and has already organized the kitchen drawers. You run your fingers near the brick without touching it. Many bricks use standardized ratios, often close to 1 part thick, 2 parts wide, 4 parts long. That mathematical habit gives the walls a calm rhythm. Maybe one tired supervisor has a clay tablet in the ancient equivalent of a clipboard, the most dangerous object in any civilization. The city does not reveal itself with a royal speech. Tunity, it gives you clues in straight lines. One lane runs north-south, another crosses at doorways open into private spaces. Drains hug the roads. Wells sit within neighborhoods. You sense planning not as one grand command, Tunity, but as tiny decisions repeated until they become a world. In many ancient places, power carves its name into stone. Here, power hides inside municipal habits. Historians still argue whether this urban order came from a centralized state, Tunity, powerful local councils, merchant cooperation, priestly authority, or some arrangement we do not yet have the words for. The awkward part is that the Indus people left no readable royal proclamations for you to lean on. Tunity, no, King So, and so built this magnificent drain because he was extremely magnificent. The past, rude as ever, has decided not to label the important drawers. You pass a worker carrying clay toward a kiln. Heat trembles beyond the fog. The kiln mouth glows like a sleepy animal with orange breath. Brickmaking is repetitive, hot, dusty work, the sort of job that makes your shoulders complain in 3 languages. Yet this work makes the city possible. Floodplains give clay, Tunity. Fire gives hardness. Human hands give shape. In a land where rivers rise and betray, fired brick becomes a promise the house will not melt during the first dramatic monsoon tantrum. The Indus River system stretches through a landscape of movement. Tunity, rivers braid and wander. Floods bring silt and danger together like a gift basket assembled by someone with questionable judgment. You look toward the haze where water glimmers, Tunity, and you understand why cities here must negotiate with nature rather than conquer it. The river is food road, threat calendar, and gossip channel. Nearby, cattle shift in their enclosure. The city becomes less ghostly, more human. Tunity, you hear sandals scuffing, pottery clinking, a child calling out, and a cartwheel bumping like a shopping trolley that has lost one wheel to chaos. Smoke rises from cooking fires. You smell grain porridge, sesame oil, Tunity, and something spiced enough to prove blandness is not a legal requirement of the Bronze Age. And then there are the little mysteries where scholarship gives way to raised eyebrows. A quirky tidbit waits in the excavated world. Tunity, some researchers and fringe enthusiasts have wondered whether certain Indus markings or urban alignments hint at forgotten astronomical habits, ritual geometry, or stories later echoed in South Asian tradition. Tunity, that does not mean you should sprint into ancient aliens wearing a tinfoil turban. Please walk. The floor is old. But it reminds you that people who planned cities also watched skies and filled objects with meanings you may never decode. You pause at the edge of a raised mound. The fog peels back, revealing rooftops, lanes, and brick faces catching gold light. This is not a ruined city yet, not tonight. Tonight it breathes. You are arriving before abandonment, before rediscovery, Tunity, before archaeologists brush dust from its silence and realize they are looking at something enormous. The baked bricks are new enough to hold warmth. Footsteps still know where they are going. The calm is deceptive, though not frightening. Tunity, more like the calm of a closed book that knows the next page is complicated. You have entered a civilization famous for what it built and infamous for what it refuses to explain. There are cities but no obvious kings, Tunity, symbols but no fully deciphered script, broad connections but few named individuals. A world large enough to impress empires, yet quiet enough to make historians squint. So you keep walking, following the line of fired brick into the waking city. The river fog thins behind you. Sunlight touches the walls. With every careful step, you feel the comfort of entering a place both ancient and familiar, as if someone 4,000 years ago also wanted clean streets, sturdy houses, tunity, and 5 peaceful minutes before the day began asking unreasonable questions. The street receives you like a line drawn by someone who had slept well, eaten breakfast, and decided civilization should not look like a drop basket of onions. You continue between brick walls still damp with dawn, tunity, and the city refuses the ancient stereotype of charming confusion. Lanes cross with purpose, houses face inward, modest from the street. Tunity, as if privacy has already become fashionable and everyone has agreed not to turn the front door into public drama. You notice how main roads are wider than side lanes, how smaller passages slip away toward courtyards. Tunity, how corners create pauses where neighbors might gossip, bargain, or pretend they were not gossiping while absolutely gossiping. The city feels planned without feeling sterile. It is warm bricks, smoke, animals, water jars, tunity, and human footsteps moving through an arrangement that keeps its balance. A mainstream historical fact sits beneath your feet. Both Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, two of the best-known Indus cities, tunity, show evidence of planned urban layouts with grid-like streets, drainage systems, wells, and carefully built brick architecture. You walk through that fact instead of merely hearing it. A drain runs beside the lane, tunity covered in places with brick slabs. Small channels seem to lead from houses into larger street drains. You lean over one covered drain and imagine the maintenance worker who had to clear it. Every civilization has its unsung heroes, tunity, and somewhere near the top is the person who says, "Fine, I will deal with the blocked drain." No statue, no hymn, just a tired back in the survival of urban life. Honestly, put that person on the money. As you pass another house, tunity, you see a well built of wedge-shaped bricks, round and deep, its mouth dark with coolness. Many Indus neighborhoods had access to wells, and water management seems unusually important. You can almost hear the rope creak, the vessel splash below. Tunity, the soft grunt as someone hauls morning water upward. The sound is ordinary, but ordinary is where a civilization proves itself. Great kings can commission monuments. Ordinary people need water before breakfast. Yet the deeper you walk, tunity, the stranger the city becomes. You expect a palace, a royal avenue, a colossal temple, something that announces, "A very important person lived here, please admire the ego." But the evidence does not hand you that easy picture. Tunity, there are large public buildings and raised areas, yes, but no confirmed palace on the Egyptian or Mesopotamian model, no obvious king's tomb overflowing with treasure, no giant statue yelling its name across the centuries. Tunity, historians still argue whether Indus cities were governed by kings, councils, priestly elites, merchant groups, or a more distributed system of authority that left fewer obvious footprints. You feel that debate in the silence between buildings. The city is organized, but the organizer stays hidden. It is like finding a perfectly planned group project and realizing nobody wrote their name on the cover page. Suspicious, impressive, and deeply annoying 4,000 years later. Tunity, a cart rolls by, pulled by a humped bull. Its wheels grind softly over packed earth. The driver watches a child committed to getting in the way, because some human traditions are older than riding. You step aside, the cart carries baskets, tunity, perhaps grain or pottery, and disappears down a side lane. You climb gently toward a higher mound where the brickwork grows more imposing. Archaeologists often divide Mohenjo-Daro into a higher western mound, sometimes called the Citadel, tunity, and a lower town, though those labels can oversimplify what people actually did there. From above, you see rooftops lying close together like folded mats. Smoke curls, birds lift from a parapet. Farther away, the river plain widens, pale and humid. Tunity, here order does not mean silence. You hear wet clay slap, wood knock, and a dog who has appointed himself head of security without formal training. Someone argues over a measure of goods, tunity, and you suspect the argument is not improved by anyone saying. Technically, according to the standard weight system, ancient customer disputes probably had fewer online reviews, but the emotional range was the same. There is a quirky tidbit, almost too neat to resist. Some fringe writers have imagined Mohenjo-Daro as a city destroyed by sudden mysterious heat, comparing parts of the site to a forgotten catastrophe. Tunity, the serious archaeological picture, is more grounded, involving occupation phases, rebuilding, flooding, changing settlement patterns, and gradual decline. Still, tunity, dramatic theories cling to ruins because a quiet drain never sells as many books as ancient apocalypse. The internet makes marketing worse. You keep moving through the lower town and the houses begin to feel personal. Tunity, many are built around courtyards, turning private life away from the street. Some have bathing areas with sloped floors. Some show stairways suggesting upper stories. Doorways are often placed to avoid direct views inside. Tunity, which feels both practical and relatable. Even in the Bronze Age, nobody wants a stranger seeing the laundry situation. The drains fascinate you more than expected. That is how the Indus gets you. You arrive hoping for lost treasure and instead become emotionally invested in wastewater engineering. Covered drains, soap jars, bathing platforms, wells, street planning, the city whispers that comfort is a system. Not luxury, not spectacle, but habits repeated in brick. And yet there are still rough edges, floods damage neighborhoods. Buildings change, streets are rebuilt. Cities are not perfect machines, they are living arguments with mud, weather crowding, and human impatience. Tunity, you notice patched brickwork, uneven repairs, corners where the line wavers. The order is real, but not magical. It is maintained, negotiated, and probably complained about by residents sure the old drainage schedule was better. By late morning, Tunity. Mohenjo-Daro stands around you in sunlit geometry, and Harappa echoes as a sibling city far away, sharing habits across distance. You feel the scale of the civilization not through a throne room, but through repetition, brick sizes, street plans, Tunity drains, wells, weights, seals. Looks a pattern so wide it becomes political even without a named king. You pass one last drain cover and almost salute it. The city has made its point. Chaos exists outside the walls, and floods, dust, heat, Tunity, trade, hunger, and time. Inside, people answer with planning, not perfectly, not forever, but carefully enough that thousands of years later, you can still walk these lines and feel a human wish as clear as morning water. Let the city work. Tunity, let the streets stay passable, let the house stay private, and please, for everyone's sake, let the drain keep flowing. The drain keeps flowing behind you, and you follow its logic toward higher ground, where the city seems to hold its breath. Afternoon has thinned into copper evening. The bricks glow warmer now. Tunity as if the sun has been slowly toasting them all day and is pleased with the result. You climb worn steps, passing walls that turn sound inward until the air changes. It smells cooler here, damp bricks, stored water, old plaster. Tunity and the faint mineral scent of something built not merely to function, but to matter. Ahead, lowered into a raised brick complex, waits the great bath. You pause at the edge before descending. The pool is rectangular, sunken. Tunity lined with finely fitted fired bricks and sealed with bitumen in places to keep water from escaping like a badly supervised secret. A mainstream historical fact rests in the structure itself. Tunity, the Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro, is one of the most famous public works of the Indus world. A large waterproof bathing tank with steps descending at both ends, surrounded by rooms and passages. Tunity. It is not the biggest building ever made by ancient hands, but it has presence, the quiet kind that does not need to shout because the acoustics are already dramatic. The last light slides across the water. It darkens from bronze to blue. Tunity, you hear small sounds amplified by the brick of footstep, a sleeve brushing a wall, water touching the side of the tank with a soft, patient slap. The place does not feel like a swimming pool, too, unless your local gym also requires ceremonial silence and possibly a Bronze Age membership card. Please towel off before entering the sacred municipal mystery. You step closer. The stairs descend with calm symmetry. Tunity. Each brick seems placed as if the builders expected you to notice, even thousands of years late. Water management here is not casual. There are indications of a nearby well and drainage arrangements, meaning the tank could be filled and emptied. Tunity. That matters. Standing here, you understand that the Indus people were not merely using water, they were staging it. They gave water architecture, boundaries, ritual possibility. Historians still argue whether the Great Bath was used for religious purification, elite ceremonies, civic gatherings, seasonal rites, initiation rituals, or some combination that refuses our tidy labels. Tunity, the phrase ritual bath, often appears because, frankly, the structure is too careful, too public, and too symbolically charged to feel like a random place for Tuesday splashing. Tunity, but the exact meaning stays locked behind the undeciphered script and the stubborn absence of helpful captions. You imagine people arriving at night. Old lamps tremble in wall niches. Their flames cast long, soft shapes across brickwork. Tunity, someone carries a jar. Someone whispers. Someone else inevitably is late and tries to enter quietly while making the maximum possible noise, proving that lateness is not a modern invention but a cosmic force. Maybe the pool reflects stars. Maybe smoke from incense hangs low. Maybe the water cools the skin after a day of heat, dust, bargaining, and pretending not to be annoyed by one's relatives. The city outside is practical drains, wells, lanes, workshops. Here, Tunity practicality gathers a second layer. The same civilization that masters wastewater also creates a place where water can become memory, boundary, renewal, or status. And status may be part of it. The Great Bath sits within the so-called Citadel Mound near other large structures. Access may have been controlled, perhaps not everyone entered freely. Perhaps the act of bathing here marked belonging, authority, purity, tunity, or participation in something communal. Yet you must be careful. The Indus has a gift for making confident statements look overdressed. Every time you try to pin one meaning down, it slips away like wet soap. Tunity, which is historically accurate and emotionally disrespectful. A quirky tidbit follows you along the edges. Some fringe interpretations have tried to connect the Great Bath with later South Asian bathing tradition, ancient yogic practice, tunity, fertility rites, or even lost priesthoods guarding secret water knowledge. The temptation is understandable. Sacred bathing does become important in later Indian religious life. But thousands of years separate these worlds. Tunity and resemblance is not proof. Sometimes a bath is ritual. Sometimes a bath is infrastructure. Sometimes it is both, because humans enjoy making simple things complicated enough for graduate seminars. You kneel near the brick lining. Tunity, the mortar and ceiling materials show a technical mind at work. Bitumen, probably brought from regions where it naturally occurs, hints at trade and specialized knowledge. You imagine builders pressing materials into seams, testing leaks, Tunity cursing under their breath in a language you cannot read. Their hands knew the problem: water is useful only if it agrees to stay where you put it. Water famously has commitment issues. The surrounding rooms deepen the mystery. Tunity, were they changing chambers? Storage spaces, places for attendance, rooms for preparation. You pass through one doorway and feel the temperature drop. The thick walls keep the evening cool. Your steps echo. Tunity, the architecture guides movement but withholds purpose. You are allowed to move through the question, not solve it. Night settles. The city beyond the complex becomes a field of faint lamps. Dogs bark somewhere below. Opportunity, a cartwheel complains in the distance. Here, beside the dark tank, everything softens. Even the bricks seem to listen. You think back to the drains of the lower town and realize water has followed you all day, from the ordinary to the symbolic. It washes courtyards. It fills jars. It runs under streets. It gathers here under open sky, held in a basin of baked earth, made important by effort. The Great Bath does not tell you what happened. Opportunity, it teaches you how to stand near uncertainty without rushing to fill it with noise. That is difficult, because your modern brain wants a label, a documentary narrator's certainty, and maybe a dramatic sound effect shaped like a bronze gong. Opportunity, instead, you receive water, brick, darkness, and a question wide enough to float in. You descend one step, then another, not entering the pool, only feeling the coolness rise from it. The water reflects your shadow in pieces. Behind you, Opportunity, the city continues its quiet work of living. Ahead, the surface stays still, guarding whatever it once meant. The drain keeps flowing behind you, and you follow its logic toward higher ground, where the city seems to hold its breath. Afternoon has thinned into copper evening. The bricks glow warmer now. Opportunity, as if the sun has been slowly toasting them all day and is pleased with the result. You climb worn steps, passing walls that turn sound inward until the air changes. It smells cooler here, damp bricks, stored water, old plaster. Opportunity, and the faint mineral scent of something built not merely to function, but to matter. Ahead, lowered into a raised brick complex, waits the Great Bath. You pause at the edge before descending. The pool is rectangular, sunken. Opportunity, lined with finely fitted fired bricks and sealed with bitumen in places to keep water from escaping like a badly supervised secret. A mainstream historical fact rests in the structure itself. Opportunity, the Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro is one of the most famous public works of the Indus world. A large waterproof bathing tank with steps descending at both ends, surrounded by rooms and passages. It is not the biggest building ever made by ancient hands, but it has presence, the quiet kind that does not need to shout because the acoustics are already dramatic. The last light slides across the water. It darkens from bronze to blue. Opportunity. You hear small sounds amplified by the brick of footstep, a sleeve brushing a wall, water touching the side of the tank with a soft, patient slap. The place does not feel like a swimming pool. Opportunity, unless your local gym also requires ceremonial silence and possibly a Bronze Age membership card. Please towel off before entering the sacred municipal mystery. You step closer. The stairs descend with calm symmetry. Opportunity. Each brick seems placed as if the builders expected you to notice, even thousands of years late. Water management here is not casual. There are indications of a nearby well and drainage arrangements, meaning the tank could be filled and empty. Opportunity. That matters. Standing here, you understand that the Indus people were not merely using water, they were staging it. They gave water architecture, boundaries, ritual possibility. Opportunity. Historians still argue whether the Great Bath was used for religious purification, elite ceremonies, civic gatherings, seasonal rites, initiation rituals, or some combination that refuses our tidy labels. Opportunity. The phrase ritual bath often appears because frankly the structure is too careful, too public, and too symbolically charged to feel like a random place for Tuesday splashing. Opportunity. But the exact meaning stays locked behind the undeciphered script and the stubborn absence of helpful captions. You imagine people arriving at night. Oil lamps tremble in wall niches. Their flames cast long, soft shapes across brickwork. Someone carries a jar, someone whispers. Someone else inevitably is late and tries to enter quietly while making the maximum possible noise, proving that lateness is not a modern invention but a cosmic force. Maybe the pool reflects stars. Maybe smoke from incense hangs low. Maybe the water cools the skin after a day of heat, dust, bargaining and pretending not to be annoyed by one's relatives. The city outside is practical drains, wells, lanes, workshops. Here, practicality gathers a second layer. The same civilization that masters wastewater also creates a place where water can become memory, boundary, renewal, or status, and status may be part of it. Opportunity. The Great Bath sits within the so-called Citadel Mound near other large structures. Access may have been controlled. Perhaps not everyone entered freely. Perhaps the act of bathing here marked belonging, authority, purity, opportunity, or participation in something communal. Yet you must be careful. The Indus has a gift for making confident statements look overdressed. Every time you try to pin one meaning down, it slips away like wet soap. Opportunity, which is historically accurate and emotionally disrespectful. A quirky tidbit follows you along the edges. Some fringe interpretations have tried to connect the Great Bath with later South Asian bathing traditions, ancient yogic practice, opportunity, fertility rites, or even lost priesthoods guarding secret water knowledge. The temptation is understandable. Sacred bathing does become important in later Indian religious life. But thousands of years separate these worlds. Opportunity and resemblance is not proof. Sometimes a bath is ritual. Sometimes a bath is infrastructure. Sometimes it is both, because humans enjoy making simple things complicated enough for graduate seminars. You kneel near the brick lining. The mortar and ceiling materials show a technical mind at work. Bitumen, probably brought from regions where it naturally occurs, hints at trade and specialized knowledge. You imagine builders pressing materials into seams, testing leaks, opportunity cursing on their breath in a language you cannot read. Their hands knew the problem: water is useful only if it agrees to stay where you put it. Water famously has commitment issues. The surrounding rooms deepen the mystery. Opportunity. Were they changing chambers? Storage spaces, places for attendance, rooms for preparation. You pass through one doorway and feel the temperature drop. The thick walls keep the evening cool. Your steps echo. Tunity. The architecture guides movement but withholds purpose. You are allowed to move through the question, not solve it. Night settles. The city beyond the complex becomes a field of faint lamps. Dogs bark somewhere below. Tunity. A cartwheel complains in the distance. Here, beside the dark tank, everything softens. Even the bricks seem to listen. You think back to the drains of the lower town and realize water has followed you all day, from the ordinary to the symbolic. For Tunity, it washes courtyards. It fills jars. It runs under streets. It gathers here under open sky, held in a basin of baked earth, made important by effort. The Great Bath does not tell you what happened. Tunity. It teaches you how to stand near uncertainty without rushing to fill it with noise. That is difficult, because your modern brain wants a label, a documentary narrator's certainty, and maybe a dramatic sound effect shaped like a bronze gong. Tunity. Instead, you receive water, brick darkness, and a question wide enough to float in. You descend one step, then another, not entering the pool, only feeling the coolness rise from it. The water reflects your shadow in pieces. Behind you, Tunity, the city continues its quiet work of living. Ahead, the surface stays still, guarding whatever it once meant. You carry the question away from the market with the last warmth of lamplight still behind your eyes. The clay seals cool on worktables. The little churchwaights sleep in their boxes. Somewhere behind you, Tunity, a merchant, is probably still emotionally recovering from giving a fair price, which is difficult for the soul. Ahead, the city narrows into quieter lanes. Tunity, and the night presses gently against the brick walls until the sounds of trade become memories. In your hand, because imagination is generous and museum security is temporarily looking the other way, rests a small square seal. It is smooth, pale, Tunity, and surprisingly heavy with attitude. An animal stands beneath a row of tiny signs. The creature might be a bull, or that famous one-horned Indus animal that looks like a unicorn's practical cousin. Tunity, the one who does taxes and owns a measuring string. Above it, short marks line up strokes, loops, little shapes that seem almost ready to speak, they do not. A mainstream historical fact sits inside this silence. The Indus script, found on seals, Tunity, tablets, pottery, copper objects, and other small items, remains undeciphered. Most inscriptions are very short, often only a handful of signs. Tunity, and no bilingual text has been found to unlock the system the way the Rosetta Stone helped with Egyptian hieroglyphs. The signs survive in neat rows, stubborn as locked doors. They are everywhere and nowhere. They prove communication happened, Tunity, but refuse to tell you what was said. You turn the seal under the moonlight. The signs are careful, not random scratches. Across the Indus world, certain symbols repeat. Some appear at the beginning of inscriptions more often, some at the end. Tunity, suggesting rules. The writing, if writing is exactly what it is, has structure. But structure is not translation. A vending machine also has structure, and that does not mean it gives you your snack when you need emotional support at 2 a.m. Tunity, historians still argue whether the Indus signs represent a full writing system, a shorter symbolic code, administrative marks, names, titles, religious phrases, clan signs, or some mix of functions that changed across time and place. Tunity, the debate is lively because the evidence is both abundant and cruelly brief. If the Indus people wrote long letters, tax records, hymns, contracts, recipes, insults, weather complaints, Tunity, or please stop blocking the drain, notices on perishable materials like cloth, bark, palm leaves, or wood, those have not survived the centuries. That possibility changes the darkness around you. Maybe the city once had far more writing than archaeology can recover. Maybe scribes marked bundles, copied accounts, recited lists, and complained that junior assistants had terrible handwriting. Maybe words moved everywhere, Tunity, but only the tiny durable fragments reached you. The past is not silent because nobody spoke. Sometimes it is silent because the paper got eaten by time. You pass a doorway where a seal hangs on a cord at someone's chest. It is more than decoration. Seals may mark identity, property, office, trade, or belonging. You imagine a person pressing the seal into soft clay at the mouth of a jar or over a tied bundle. The impression dries and the object carries a message. Tunity, this is mine, this is counted, this is passed through proper hands. Please do not pretend the goat did it. The animals deepen the mystery. Bulls appear, elephants, rhinoceroses, water buffalo, composite creatures. And then over and over, the so-called unicorn, a long-bodied animal with one projecting horn, usually standing before a strange object, sometimes called a ritual stand or manger. It is one of the most common Indus seal images. Tunity, which feels unfair because the most common image is also one of the least explainable. The Indus people had excellent branding and terrible customer notes. A quirky tidbit walks beside you now, wearing a slightly dramatic cloak. Tunity, fringe writers have linked the Indus signs to everything from lost Vedic secrets to Proto-Dravidian poems, ancient yoga manuals, star maps, and even messages from forgotten global civilizations. Tunity, serious scholars have proposed many possibilities too, including connections to early Dravidian languages or other language families, but proof remains elusive. Tunity. The trick is that almost any short, undeciphered inscription can be persuaded to say something if you stare at it with enough confidence and too much coffee. Tunity, you sit near a small oil lamp and imagine trying to read the seal as a citizen of this city might. The signs would not be mysterious, they would be obvious, ordinary, perhaps even boring. Tunity. Warehouse 5. Owner's mark. 1 jar of sesame. Priest of the horn thing. Or maybe, return the seal if found. Because people were people, and someone always loses the important stamp 10 minutes before closing. Tunity. The thought makes the city feel closer. Mystery is not always grand. Sometimes mystery is an invoice. Sometimes it is a shipping label. Sometimes it is a name. The tragedy of undeciphered writing is not only that you cannot read kings or myths. It is that you cannot hear ordinary people saying ordinary things. You cannot know what they called their children, their streets, their gods, their jokes, their bad neighbors, or that one bull who kept escaping. Moonlight lowers over the lane. The seal in your palm cools until it feels like a small stone from the riverbed. You realize the Indus world is doing something unusual to you. Egypt gives names that echo. Mesopotamia gives tablets that argue, count, praise, and complain. Tunity. The Indus gives signs that hover just outside meaning. It invites you close, then covers its mouth with one finger. You place the seal back where it belongs, leaving the animal and its unreadable symbols to the night. Tunity. The city continues without explanation. Somewhere someone stamps wet clay, trusting everyone who matters will understand. You unfortunately are 4,000 years late to the conversation and did not bring the password, Tunity, so you move on through the sleeping lanes, carrying not an answer but a sharper kind of attention. Every wall, seal, jar mark, and tiny sign now seems to whisper in a language that has not vanished. Exactly, it is still here. Tunity, it is just waiting behind glass, behind clay, behind time, refusing to become simple for your convenience. You leave the silent seals behind, and by the time the first gray light begins returning to the eastern sky, the market has become quiet again. The scent of smoke lingers over the streets, mixed with damp earth and cooling brick. Tunity. A few early workers are already awake, sweeping courtyards, checking storage jars, feeding cattle that seem convinced breakfast is always several minutes late. Life resumes without fanfare, which is exactly how great civilizations usually survive. Tunity. You follow the smell of grain. Not fresh bread, tempting as that would be after several thousand years of walking, but sacks of harvested barley and wheat waiting to be measured, moved, counted, and protected. Tunity. The streets gradually widen until they lead you toward one of the large brick structures archaeologists have long associated with food storage. Massive platforms rise above the ground, practical rather than decorative. Tunity. As though the building's greatest ambition is simply to keep tomorrow from becoming a famine. A mainstream historical fact stands before you. Tunity. Archaeologists uncovered several large brick buildings at Harappa and other Indus sites that were once commonly interpreted as granaries because of their size, layout, and association with agricultural production. Tunity. Grain agriculture, especially wheat and barley, formed an important foundation of the Indus economy alongside livestock and other crops. The closer you get, the more you notice that grain is never just grain. It is labor carried inside tiny seeds. It is rainfall remembered. It is river floods behaving themselves for one season instead of another. Tunity. Every basket represents hundreds of quiet decisions made months earlier by farmers watching clouds with far more attention than any weather app ever receives. Workers lift woven baskets on wooden platforms. Others stack sacks in careful rows. Tunity. Dust hangs lazily in shafts of morning sunlight. Someone sneezes loudly enough to frighten a pigeon into the air, proving that allergies too apparently have a very long history. You crouch near the floor, running your fingers across baked brick. Tunity. Air moves gently through narrow spaces beneath raised sections of the structure. Ventilation matters. Moisture is the enemy of stored grain. Rodents are even less welcome. Civilization often sounds grand in textbooks, Tunity, but at ground level it frequently becomes an endless argument with mold, insects, and hungry mice, yet certainty begins to slip away. Historians still argue whether these famous buildings were actually granaries at all. Tunity. Some researchers believe they truly stored grain. Others suggest they may have served administrative, ceremonial, industrial, or entirely different purposes. The traditional name granary remains familiar, but the evidence is far from conclusive. Once again, the Indus civilization smiles politely and refuses to provide a convenient label. You almost imagine an ancient builder watching modern archaeologists debate his building and quietly muttering, "You are all standing in the wrong room." The thought is comforting, not because anyone enjoys confusion, but because it reminds you that the past was lived by ordinary people, not by museum display cards. Tunity. They built structures to solve practical problems. Thousands of years later, you are trying to reverse engineer those decisions from bricks, stains, foundations, and educated guesses. Outside the building, the fields stretch toward the river. Tunity. The floodplain is generous when treated with respect. Seasonal flooding spreads fertile silt across the land. Farmers sow crops after waters retreat. Oxen pull wooden plows through soft soil. Children carry water. Tunity. Families watch the sky with the cautious optimism known to farmers everywhere, ancient or modern. Rain that arrives too late becomes worry. Rain that arrives too early becomes different worry. Tunity. Agriculture here is less about conquering nature than negotiating with it. You notice bundles of barley heads drying in the morning air. Nearby stand baskets that may hold lentils, peas, sesame, or other crops known from the archaeological record. Tunity. Dates grow in warmer areas. Cattle graze beyond the fields, their slow movement somehow matching the calm rhythm of the civilization itself. The farmers do not seem wealthy. Neither do they seem desperate. Instead, Tunity. They appear deeply occupied by the practical mathematics of survival. How much seed to save, how much grain to eat, how much to trade, how much to store for seasons that refuse to cooperate. A child chases chickens across a courtyard. Tunity. The chickens ignore every instruction with remarkable professionalism. Some things truly never change. You watch women grind grain using stone querns, their movements steady enough to become almost musical. Flour gathers slowly. Tunity. Meals begin long before cooking starts. Civilization begins even earlier, with the planting of fields months before anyone tastes bread. A quirky tidbit drifts into your thoughts as the grinding stones turn. Tunity. Some fringe writers have suggested that the enormous storage buildings prove the existence of vast centralized food control, or even hidden priestly economies directing every harvest from above. Tunity. The archaeological evidence does not support such dramatic certainty. Large storage and organized agriculture certainly existed, but exactly how grain was collected, distributed, taxed, tunity, or shared remains an open question rather than a solved mystery. The more time you spend here, the more impressive restraint becomes. No gigantic inscription announces, "Tunity, behold my magnificent grain warehouse." No ruler poses proudly beside an oversized sack of barley for an official portrait. Instead, competence hides inside repetition. Fields planted, harvest gathered, grain dried. Stores protected, tunity, families fed, cities continue. The simplicity is almost deceptive. Without these routines, there would be no workshops carving seals, no bead makers polishing carnelian, no merchants arguing over weights, no great bath reflecting starlight. Tunity. Every polished achievement in the city quietly depends upon anonymous farmers whose names dissolved long before their harvests did. You pick up a single grain resting near the edge of a woven basket. It weighs almost nothing. Yet thousands of grains become meals, thousands of meals become workers, thousands of workers become cities, thousands of cities become civilizations. And civilizations, you are beginning to realize, are rarely held together by dramatic speeches. Tunity. More often they survive because enough ordinary people wake up every morning, do repetitive work surprisingly well, and somehow resist the temptation to throw grain at one another during staff meetings. The sun climbs higher. Tunity. Workers disappear into buildings carrying fresh baskets. Oxen continue across the fields with patient determination. Behind you, the city slowly awakens again. Ahead, the river waits exactly where it always has. Tunity. Quietly reminding every generation that prosperity begins not with monuments, but with soil, water, and the humble confidence that this year's harvest will carry everyone safely into the next. You leave the grain behind as the day warms, and the city's appetite follows you toward the river. Every stored basket, every sealed jar, every carefully weighed bead seems to lean in the same direction now, toward movement. Goods want roads. Tunity. Roads want carts. Carts want riverbanks. Riverbanks want boats. Being boats, want to make everybody slightly nervous while pretending they are perfectly safe. The Indus waits ahead, broad and slow under the pale sun. Tunity. Its surface carries broken reflections of reeds, birds, and clouds that look too relaxed for something capable of flooding half a landscape. Men move along the bank with ropes over their shoulders. Bales and jars sit in clusters. Tunity. Wooden vessels rest near the mud, flat-bottomed and practical, smelling of wet timber, rope, fiber, fish. Tunity. And the mysterious ancient perfume known as cargo has been here all night. You step carefully onto a boat as workers load goods beside you. Carnelian beads packed in small containers. Cotton textiles folded tight, shell bangles, pottery, tunity, timber, sesame oil, perhaps ivory, copper, and other valuables moving through networks so large they make the city feel less isolated and more like one glowing knot in a web. A mainstream historical fact rides with you. Tunity. The Indus Valley civilization traded with regions far beyond its cities, including Mesopotamia, and Mesopotamian records mention a distant land called Meluha that many scholars associate with the Indus region. Indus-style seals, beads, tunity, and materials have been found in or linked to places around the Persian Gulf and Mesopotamia, showing that this was not a sleepy little river culture minding its own bricks. The boat pushes away from shore. Mud releases the hull with a soft gasp. Tunity. The river takes over. You feel the pull immediately, not violent, but definite. The city slides backward, its brick platform shrinking into haze. Tunity. Workers on shore continue shouting instructions even after the boat is too far away to benefit from them. Because across all centuries, people believe volume can fix logistics. You sit near a bundle wrapped in cloth and watch the water widen. Tunity. River travel is not glamorous. It is slow, damp, and full of insects who have no respect for historical importance. But it is powerful. Rivers turn heavy cargo into possibility. A cart can groan under weight. Tunity. But a boat carries bulk with patient grace, assuming nobody misjudges the current and turns the whole expedition into a floating apology. You follow the river southward in imagination toward the Arabian Sea. Tunity. Toward coastal settlements and ports where goods can move farther still. Lothal in present-day Gujarat is often discussed for its possible dockyard or basin, though interpretations vary. At coastal sites, the Indus world seems to face outward. Tunity. Watching tides, boats, and distant opportunities. Historians still argue whether the structure at Lothal was truly a dockyard, an irrigation tank, a reservoir, or a multi-purpose basin adapted to changing water conditions. The debate matters because it shapes how confidently you can imagine Indus ships docking there under organized maritime control. The past once again refuses to stamp your passport clearly. Still, the sea is waiting, days blur into heat, salt, tunity, and creaking wood. You smell drying fish, tar like sealants, wet rope, and human patience being tested by humidity. At night, the stars sharpen over dark water. Someone watches the sky for direction. Someone checks cargo tays. Tunity. Someone snores with the confidence of a man who has never heard himself. The Persian Gulf opens as a chain of contacts rather than one heroic voyage. Trade likely moved through intermediary ports as well as direct routes. Places like Dilmun, Tuni often associated with Bahrain himself, the Persian Gulf opens as a chain of contacts rather than one heroic voyage. Trade and Magan, often linked to Oman, appear in Mesopotamian texts as important trading regions. Between them, goods, languages, Tunity, and habits pass from hand to hand. You imagine arriving in a Mesopotamian port where the air smells different: bitumen, reeds, beer, baked mud brick, river silt from another world. Scribes sit with tablets, Tunity pressing wedge-shaped cuneiform into clay. Unlike the Indus script, their writing will one day be read by modern scholars, which feels slightly unfair. Tunity, like one civilization remembered to turn in homework and the other left it in a backpack made of leaves. A merchant from Meluha may stand nearby, perhaps needing a translator. Mesopotamian sources mention Meluhan interpreters, Tunity, which suggests language barriers serious enough to require professionals. You picture one exhausted interpreter trying to explain bead quality, copper weight, delivery delays, and why nobody should touch the sealed bundle. Tunity, the oldest international business meeting, probably still had someone saying, "Let's circle back." The goods themselves speak across distance. Carnelian beads from the Indus are especially admired. Some are etched with white designs, Tunity, delicate and strange, requiring skill and controlled treatment. These beads travel farther than most people ever will. A tiny red stone can cross seas, enter foreign hands, Tunity, and outlive kingdoms with the smugness of jewelry that knows it has archival value. A quirky tidbit drifts in with the Gulf wind fringe theories sometimes imagine Malu as a lost empire, a seafaring secret brotherhood, Tunity, or even a hidden source of later myths about faraway golden lands. The sober picture is less theatrical but still remarkable. Meluha may simply have been how Mesopotamians referred to a distant trading region connected to the Indus. Tunity, exotic because distance always makes ordinary things seem more dramatic. Even a shipping crate becomes mysterious if it arrives from far enough away. You watch a Mesopotamian buyer handle an Indus seal. He cannot read the signs, you cannot either, Tunity. But perhaps the seal's authority is recognized through trade relationships. Perhaps it marks a merchant, a city, a workshop, a household, or an office. The object crosses language without surrendering its meaning completely, and there, Tunity, in the foreign marketplace, the quiet Indus style becomes visible by contrast. No giant boast, no royal face stamped everywhere. Instead, measured goods, elegant seals, polished beads, cotton cloth, standardized weights, Tunity, and the reputation of people who can produce beauty at scale without leaving a memoir. The journey back begins before the scene fully fades. Cargo changes, Mesopotamian silver, wool, dates, or other materials may move in return. IDs travel too, Tunity, though not always in ways archaeology can catch. A technique, a story, a taste, a loanword, a rumor about a faraway city with excellent drains. These things cross water without needing a crate. Tunity, as your boat turns toward the hazy coast of the Indus world, you feel the civilization widen inside your mind. It is not only brick streets and silent signs. It is movement, rivers, coasts, ports, interpreters, beads, boats, Tunity, and strangers' trusting marks pressed into clay. The city you left is still there, but now it is connected to a horizon. Behind you, Mesopotamia sinks into heat shimmer. Ahead, the Indus waits with its muddy banks, straight streets. Tunity, an impossible calm, ready to receive whatever the sea has carried home. The river brings you home with salt still drying on your clothes, and by the time the city rises again through the heat haze, its brick walls feel almost familiar. The docks, carts, market voices, Tunity, and seal impressions drying on clay all wait where you left them, as if the wider world has been only a long breath taken between two ordinary afternoons. You step back into the streets, but this time you do not follow merchants, priests, builders, Tunity, or river traffic. You follow the quieter trail of daily life, slipping behind walls and into courtyards where civilizations stop performing for history and begin looking for a clean cup. A doorway opens from the lane into a house. From the street, Tunity, it is modest, almost secretive. The outer wall gives little away, no grand facade, no carved family motto bragging, "We have excellent drainage and emotionally stable goats." Inside, however, Tunity, the house unfolds around a small courtyard where light falls like warm cloth. Rooms open inward. A stairway climbs toward an upper floor or roof. The air smells of cooked grain, damp bricks, smoke, and stored jars. Tunity, a mainstream historical fact, waits in the plan of the home. Many houses in Indus cities were built around courtyards, often with access to wells, bathing platforms, drains, and sometimes staircases that suggest upper stories. Tunity, domestic architecture at Mohenjo-Daro and other sites shows a striking concern for pride or use and household organization. You pause by a bathing area. The floor slopes slightly toward a drain. The brickwork is simple, practical, Tunity, and more thoughtful than some hotel bathrooms that charge extra for towels. Water from washing could pass into a covered drain outside, joining the larger system you met earlier. The same logic that shaped public streets enters private life. Cleanliness here is not just ritual grandeur at the Great Bath, it is routine, domestic, and probably enforced by whoever has strong opinions about muddy feet. A woman kneels near a grinding stone, turning grain into flour with steady pressure. Tunity. Nearby, a child plays with a small terracotta cart, complete with little wheels, while another figure, a toy animal, perhaps a bull, rests on its side with the tragic dignity of all toys abandoned mid-story. The child makes a sound that might be a cart driver shouting at traffic. Some traditions do not age, they simply get smaller wheels. Terracotta toys are among the most touching remains from the Indus world. Carts, animals, figurines, and small objects remind you that these cities were not only systems of trade and drainage, but places where children turn clay into imagined journeys. A toy card is not a royal inscription, but it may be more tender. Tunity. It says someone had time to make play durable. Historians still argue whether many small figurines found in Indus homes represent toys, household ritual objects, fertility symbols, protective charms, teaching tools, or things whose categories do not match modern expectations. One clay figure can become a goddess, a doll, an ancestor, a joke, or all of the above, depending on who is explaining it. You move deeper into the house. Storage jars line a wall. Some hold grain. Others may hold oil, water, pulses, or goods waiting for use. Pottery shapes daily rhythm, carrying, storing, cooking, serving. Every vessel has a job. A cracked pot near the corner has been repaired or reused. Tunity, because throwing things away too quickly is a luxury, and ancient households had better sense than a modern inbox full of promotional emails. On a low platform, someone prepares food. You imagine flatbread baking, lentils simmering, sesame warming, fish drying in coastal areas, dates adding sweetness in some regions. Meals vary by place, season, and household wealth, but the basic truth is familiar. People gather, eat, complain gently, ask who finished the last portion, tunity, and pretend they are not keeping track. The house holds privacy carefully. Doorways do not always open directly into main rooms. The inner courtyard protects family life from the street's busy eye. Tunity. You think about how much of Indus civilization survives as public order, but how much of its emotional life must have lived here? Arguments, lullabies, recipes, tired silences, jokes repeated until everyone groaned on schedule. Tunity, a quirky tidbit follows the smoke upwards. Some fringe enthusiasts have looked at certain Indus household features and imagined advanced ancient plumbing wisdom, proto-yogic domestic rituals, tunity, or even lost design principles meant to harmonize family life with cosmic forces. The safer truth is already impressive. These homes show adaptation to climate, privacy, water, and social routine. You do not need a cosmic blueprint when a well-placed drain is already doing heroic work. You climb the stairs toward the roof. The evening air is cooler above the courtyard. Roof spaces may have been used for sleeping in hot weather, drying goods, working, watching neighbors, or pretending not to watch neighbors. From here you see other rooftops close by, separated by lanes like narrow streams of shadow. Smoke rises in soft threads. Tunity, a dog barks as if reporting something urgent to a committee that does not exist. The city feels different from above. Less like a plan, more like a fabric. Each house is not a private labor. Each courtyard holds its own weather of voices. Tunity. Wells glimmer in open spaces. Drains carry away what must leave. Storage jars hold what must remain. The great achievements of the Indus are repeated quietly behind walls where nobody expects applause for washing, grinding, cooking, storing, tunity, or keeping children from feeding pebbles to the family goat. You remember the market's seals and the great bath's dark water, and now the callback returns in humbler form. Tunity, the same civilization that stamped goods for distant trade, also made toy carts for small hands. The same people who built waterproof public tanks also sloped bathroom floors. Tunity, the same culture that traveled toward Meluha, came home to courtyards and cooking smoke. Night gathers. Lamps appear one by one inside houses, small yellow squares of human persistence. Tunity, you descend from the roof and pass the abandoned toy cart again. Tomorrow it will roll through another imaginary city, driven by a child who does not know their world will one day be called lost. You step back into the lane quietly. Tunity, careful not to disturb the household. Behind you, ordinary life continues, and it is ordinary life that makes the ruins ache. Not because it was simple, but because it was full, water drawn, grain ground, toys broken, meals shared. Tunity, roofs cooled by night air, and private rooms holding all the names the seals will not give back. The lane carries you away from the sleeping household, but the little toy cart stays in your mind, rolling silently through a city of clay, courtyards, and unreadable signs. Night has settled fully now. The rooftops are dark. Cooking smoke thins into the stars. Somewhere, a bull shifts its weight in a courtyard and exhales with the deep seriousness of an animal who knows agriculture depends on him and would like everyone to remember it. Tunity, you follow another narrow street toward a workshop where lamplight still burns. A seal carver is awake because apparently deadlines existed before email. Small stones lie beside him. Finished seals sit in rows, Tunity, each one holding an animal under a short line of signs. Bulls, elephants, rhinoceroses, water buffalo, tigers, goats, composite creatures, and that strange one-horned animal return again and again. Tunity, calm as if they know exactly what they mean and are not planning to explain it to you. A mainstream historical fact rests in these images. Indus seals commonly feature animals in short inscriptions. Tunity, and many scholars believe they played roles in identity, trade administration, or ritual life. The famous so-called unicorn motif is especially common, even though no actual unicorn has ever stepped forward to clarify the matter. Tunity, which is rude but unsurprising, you lean closer to one seal. The one-horned animal stands before a mysterious object, sometimes interpreted as a ritual stand, manger, offering table, or something else entirely. Its body is elegant and controlled. Tunity, its horn curves forward. It looks less like a fantasy beast and more like a symbol that once felt completely obvious. That is the most annoying kind of mystery, not the impossible one, but the once simple one. Tunity, the carver turns another seal toward the light. This one shows a powerful humped bull, head lowered, muscles suggested with spare lines. The animal feels alive despite being tiny. It carries strength, wealth, fertility, labor, tunity, and maybe status all at once. Cattle mattered deeply in the Indus world, not only as animals in fields, but as symbols stamped into clay, traded across spaces, and remembered in fired earth. Then you see the stranger figure. On one seal, Tunity, a horned person or deity-like figure, sits in a posture that some have compared to later yogic poses surrounded by animals. This image is often called the Pashupati seal in popular discussions. Though that label is debated, Tunity, it has become one of the most famous and most argued over objects from the Indus world. One tiny seal and suddenly everyone in the room becomes a detective, a theologian, Tunity, and someone who definitely should not be allowed near a documentary soundtrack unsupervised. Historians still argue whether this horn-seated figure represents a deity, a ritual specialist, a mythic being, a symbol of authority, Tunity, an early form connected to later South Asian religious ideas, or something completely different that modern categories distort. The temptation to connect it directly to later Shiva traditions is strong, but evidence remains uncertain. The seal invites comparison, then quietly removes the latter. You step outside again, carrying the image in your mind. The city feels full of animals now, not just the real ones sleeping in courtyards, pulling carts, grazing beyond the walls, Tunity, or lurking in the marshes, but symbolic animals stamped, carved, fired, repeated, carried. They move through trade and ritual without moving at all. A tiger on a seal can travel farther than a living tiger would ever bother to go, Tunity, especially if the tiger has a sensible attitude toward boat travel. A tree appears beyond a small open space, its dark branches shifting in the night breeze. Some Indus imagery includes trees, human figures, animals, Tunity, and scenes that seem to suggest ritual or myth. You imagine people gathering near sacred trees, offering something, telling stories, teaching children what certain animals mean. Or perhaps you are overrating a practical design. Tunity, the Indus is very good at making you feel clever right before it steals your certainty. You remember the great bath at night, the water reflecting stars. You remember seals cooling on market tables. Tunity, you remember household figurines that might be toys, charms, or symbols. The religious life of the Indus does not rise before you as a temple with a clear signboard. It appears in fragments, seals, figurines, animal motifs, possible ritual structures, bathing spaces, burials, fire altars at some sites, and repeated images that once belonged to shared meaning. A quirky tidbit drifts through the dark like incense smoke. Tunity, fringe writers have turned Indus symbols into almost every kind of hidden doctrine imaginable: lost yoga schools, mother goddess cults, serpent mysteries, cosmic animal codes, Tunity, and occasionally theories so enthusiastic they should be offered a glass of water and a quiet chair. Some of these ideas begin with real objects, but the leap from object to certainty can be longer than the trade route to Mesopotamia. Tunity. You walk toward the edge of the city where the air smells wetter. The marshland beyond the settlement rustles. Crocodiles may lurk in river environments, though tonight you see only dark water and reeds. Still, you decide not to test the theory. You have survived drains, trade negotiations, undeciphered script, and ancient boat travel. Losing to a sleepy reptile now would be poor narrative management. The animals on the seals may reflect the world around the Indus people, Tunity, but they also transform it. The rhinoceros becomes not just an animal, but an emblem. The elephant becomes presence, the bull becomes power. The unicorn-like creature becomes something stranger, maybe clan, office, deity, myth, Tunity, or standardized sign of a group. Without readable text, meaning remains suspended. That suspension is not emptiness, it is density. Every repeated symbol suggests an agreement once shared by thousands of people. Tunity, every animal image tells you that the Indus imagination was not blank simply because you cannot translate it. Their world had categories, stories, fears, protections, jokes, rituals, Tunity, and probably arguments about whether the new seal design was too modern. Someone always says that. The night deepens, you pass a wall where a small terracotta figurine rests in a niche. It might be decorative, it might be protective. Tunity, it might have been placed there by a child who forgot it. The object refuses to choose one meaning for your convenience. And so you keep moving slower now, letting the animals gather around the edges of thought. Bulls lower their heads. Tunity, elephants lift their trunks. Tigers slide through carved stone. The unicorn waits beside its unknown stand. The horned figure sits in stillness, surrounded by creatures calm as the great bath's water and just as unreadable. The city sleeps. Its symbols remain awake. Beyond the sleeping symbols, the city loosens into fields. You leave the brick lanes before sunrise, passing the last quiet houses, the last covered drains, the last courtyard lamps fading behind walls. The air opens. It smells of damp soil, Tunity cattle, river mud, crushed grass, and smoke drifting from cooking fires that are still deciding whether to become breakfast. The horizon widens until Mohenjo-Daro feels less like a city and more like a thought held briefly inside an enormous plain. Tunity, you follow a cattle path where hoofprints press into soft earth. The ground remembers water. Here everything depends on timing, flood, retreat, planning, grazing, harvest, storage. The city behind you may look orderly, Tunity, but out here order's a negotiation with sky and river, and the river is not known for reading the minutes from last meeting. A mainstream historical fact rises with the morning mist. Tunity, the Indus civilization depended heavily on agriculture and pastoralism, with people growing crops such as wheat and barley, keeping cattle, sheep, goats, and water buffalo, and adapting to floodplains, seasonal rains, and shifting river systems. The grand urban world of bricks, seals, drains, and trade rested on the quieter labor fields. You watch farmers moving before the heat grows harsh. An ox pulls a wooden plow through the soil slow and steady, Tunity, while a man guides it with the patience of someone who knows that shouting at oxen does not improve agricultural technology. Nearby, women carry baskets, children gather fuel, Tunity, and dogs trot along as if they have been promoted to assistant supervisors. They have not, but nobody has the emotional energy to correct them. The fields are not all the same. Some lie close to old flood channels. Some depend on rainfall. Some sit near wells or seasonal water sources. The Indus world spans diverse environments, from river plains to semi-arid zones, coastlands, and foothills. Survival here requires flexibility. A crop choice is never just a crop choice. Opportunity is a bet placed against weather, insects, soil timing, and the personality of the nearest river. Historians still argue whether climate change, weakening monsoons, river shifts, social changes, trade disruption, opportunity, or some combination of pressures played the largest role in transforming Indus urban life after its mature phase. The scholarly debate does not unfold like a clean detective story. It behaves more like a muddy field after rain, full of tracks, opportunity, overlapping paths, and at least one person insisting their sandals were fine before they stepped in. You reach a low rise where the landscape reveals itself in layers. Fields spread in patches, cattle graze near water. Farther away, opportunity, a dry channel cuts through the land, a scar from a river that once moved differently. This is the fragile heart of the Indus story. Rivers are not stone roads. They wander, flood, split, abandoned channels, opportunity, and sometimes behave like very large snakes with poor commitment skills. The Ghaggar-Hakra system, often discussed in connection with many Harappan sites, becomes part of this larger puzzle. Some scholars connect it with ancient river courses that changed over time, while others debate the timing, water sources, and relationship to settlements. Opportunity, you stand near the imagined edge of such a channel and feel how unsettling it would be if the water route your grandparents trusted no longer behaved as expected. A city can rebuild a wall. Replacing a river is more difficult, unless your public works department has become wildly overconfident. A quirky tidbit drifts across the fields with the dust. Some fringe theories identify the Ghaggar-Hakra with the legendary Sarasvati River described in later texts, to imagining a grand lost river whose disappearance explains the fall of the Indus world almost by itself. The idea has emotional power and some serious geographic discussion around it, but the simple version is too neat. Rivers, climates, opportunity, and cultures rarely cooperate with one dramatic explanation. History dislikes being reduced to one missing blue line on a map. The sun climbs higher and the fields brighten into golden brown. You hear sickles cutting stalks. Grain heads fall into baskets. A water buffalo flicks its ears with the lazy arrogance of an animal too large to be hurried. Someone calls across the field. Someone laughs. Opportunity. Someone drops a bundle and mutters with the ancient dignity of a person who will blame the rope. You realize how much of this world is seasonal. The city's grid feels permanent, but the countryside breathes in cycles. Floodwater comes and goes. Opportunity. Crops rise and fall. Herds move. Fish appear in channels. Birds follow wetlands. People store, repair, wait, and watch. Monsoon clouds are not scenery, they are decision makers with bad communication habits. In a village beyond the fields, opportunity, you see houses of mud, brick, and wattle smaller than the urban homes, but connected to the same cultural world. Pottery shapes are familiar. Tools repeat. A bead on someone's wrist catches light. Opportunity. The boundary between city and countryside is not a wall. It is a flow of grain, animals, labor, marriage ties, goods, news, and obligations. The city needs the fields. The fields need markets, craft goods, perhaps protection, opportunity, perhaps ritual centers, perhaps nothing so simple. You stop near a well where a rope has worn grooves into the edge. Water rises in a clay vessel, dark and precious. Opportunity. The person drawing it does not look impressed by your poetic thoughts about civilization. Fair enough. Poetry is nice, but the goats are thirsty. The open land changes the way you understand the Indus. Opportunity. Its mystery is not only in unread signs or strange seals. It is also in the environment that sustained it. A civilization can be brilliant and still vulnerable to rivers shifting, rains weakening, trade routes changing, soils tiring. Opportunity. Or people deciding that smaller settlements make more sense than crowded cities. Collapse, if that word even fits, may begin as 1,000 practical adjustments. You look back toward the distant city, its brick walls shimmer in the heat. Opportunity, calm and geometric. Around you, the fields rustle, less orderly but more alive. The Indus world is not a miracle placed on the plain. It is a bargain between mud and fire, water and brick, crop and storage, cattle path and trade route, opportunity, monsoon hope, and human patience. And as the sky gathers thin clouds in the far distance, you keep walking through the fields, listening to the restless weather above and the old river below, both still deciding what kind of future they will allow. The thin clouds remain behind you like unfinished thoughts as you turn from the fields back toward the sounds of making. The countryside does not vanish, it follows in the materials carried into town: clay from riverbanks, opportunity, shell from distant coasts, copper from mining regions, timber from groves, stones from places whose names you cannot recover. Every workshop is really a map folded into a room, opportunity, and every small object on a mat has traveled farther than it politely admits. You enter a beadmaker's quarter where the air itself seems powdered with patience. Carnelian nodules lie in baskets, still at first glance, not yet the red-orange sparks that merchants will later lift in the market as if they have trapped sunset on a string. A worker sorts stones by size and quality. Another heats them carefully, changing their color, coaxing depth from the mineral. A third drills, polishes, and checks the line of a bead so slender it makes your modern attention span look like a goat loose in a pottery stall. A mainstream historical fact gleams here: Indus craft specialists produced highly skilled goods, opportunity, including long carnelian beads, etched beads, shell bangles, faience ornaments, copper and bronze tools, pottery, and steatite seals. Their products show standardization, technical knowledge, and long-distance exchange. Tunity linking workshops to market cities, villages, and foreign trade. You sit nearby, trying not to breathe too dramatically over someone's delicate work. The bead maker uses a tiny drill with careful pressure, turning stone into symmetry one stubborn moment at a time. It is the kind of craft that punishes impatience instantly. One careless push and a week's work becomes archaeological evidence of someone having a very bad afternoon. Tunity. The workshop is not glamorous in the way treasure rooms are glamorous. It is full of grit, heat, small tools, sore wrists, and concentration. Yet this is where the civilization's beauty becomes portable. A city wall stays where it is. Tunity. A bead travels, a seal travels. A shell bangle travels on someone's wrist, catching light in a village, a port, or a foreign courtyard where nobody knows how much dust entered the maker's nose. Historians still argue whether Indus craft production was controlled by elites, organized through independent specialist households, managed by merchant networks, or shaped by local traditions connected through shared standards. Tunity. The objects look disciplined, but discipline does not automatically reveal the manager. Once again, the Indus gives you precision without handing over the office chart. Very rude. Excellent craftsmanship, terrible documentation. Nearby. Tunity. A shell worker saws carefully through a marine shell brought far from the coast. The shell's pale curve becomes bangles, rings, inlays, or ornaments. You hear the scrape of cutting, steady as insects in dry grass. Tunity. Shell dust gathers on the worker's hands. Somewhere waves once moved this material, now it lies in a river city, becoming decoration. The sea has entered the house by another route. Then you pass into a potter's yard. Tunity. Clay vessels dry in rows under the sun, red and buff, some painted with black designs, fish scales, intersecting circles, leaves, animals, geometric patterns that feel both decorative and controlled. The potter's wheel turns with a soft hum. Tunity. A vessel rises under wet hands, swelling outward, narrowing, finding its lip. You have seen cities planned in grids and drains covered in brick. Now you see the same habit of order appear in a bowl. The kiln waits at the yard's edge. Tunity. Hot as an argument. Firing pottery is a negotiation with flame, and flame is not famous for reasonable feedback. Too little heat and the pot fails. Too much and the pot warps. Somewhere, an ancient potter surely blamed the weather, the wood, Tunity. The apprentice, the spirits, and possibly a chicken. This is not evidence, just emotional realism. A quirky tidbit flickers with the kiln light. Tunity. Some fringe enthusiasts look at the precision of Indus beads and drilling techniques and imagine lost technologies far beyond Bronze Age skill. But patient experimentation, specialized tools, abrasive materials, Tunity, and trained hands can accomplish astonishing things without needing lasers, aliens, or a secret instruction manual hidden under a unicorn seal. Humans are already strange enough. In another workshop, a metal worker handles copper and bronze. Tunity. The glow is harsher here. Tools, blades, fishhooks, mirrors, and ornaments may emerge from such spaces, though stone tools continue alongside metal ones. The Bronze Age is not a clean upgrade screen where everyone clicks, install Civilization version 2.0. People use what works. Stone, bone, shell, clay, metal, fiber, wood. Each material has its own personality, cost, and complaint. Tunity. You notice faience objects too, bright and glassy, made from crushed quartz and minerals that produce blue-green surfaces when fired. They seem almost watery, little pieces of cooled sky. In a world of brick, mud, and grain, Tunity. Such colors must have felt magical. Even now, they draw the eye with quiet mischief, like jewelry that knows it will survive longer than the person wearing it. The craftspeople are not merely making things, they are making identity. Tunity. A bead can signal taste, status, region, trade connection, ritual, role, or belonging. A seal can authorize, a bangle can mark beauty, adulthood, marriage, wealth, fashion. Tunity. Or simply the human desire to put something nice on the body because life is dusty and risks deserve encouragement. You step back and let the workshops merge, drilling, scraping, turning, firing, hammering, polishing. Tunity. The city's silence in writing is balanced by eloquence in objects. Every polished bead says someone trained for years. Every repeated vessel form says people shared expectations. Every seal says a hand, a name, a mark, a system. Tunity. Every shell bangle says the coast touched the inland city. You remember the grain fields and the restless sky, and now the link is clear. Agricultural surplus makes craft specialization possible. Trade spreads craft goods outward. Tunity. Standards bring distant makers into shared rhythm. The Indus achievement is not only that its artists made beautiful things, it is that so many small perfections fitted into a wide civilization without losing their quiet human scale. Tunity. Evening approaches. The bead maker lifts one finished carnelian bead and threads it onto a line with others. In the low light, the strand glows like embers waiting to travel. You watch it swing gently, Tunity, and for a moment the whole Indus world seems held there. River, fire, human patience, trade, wind, city, order, and a tiny drilled opening through which time itself keeps passing. The bead glows in memory as you leave the workshop. A tiny ember of patience threaded onto the larger core of the city. Evening settles over the brick lanes, but something in the air has changed. Not suddenly, no trumpet sounds. Tunity. No wall cracks open for dramatic effect. The goats remain irritatingly normal, yet the city feels less certain than it did when you first entered through river fog and fired brick. You notice repairs first. Tunity. A wall has been patched with less care than the older brickwork. A drain cover sits unevenly. One lane narrows where a house has expanded awkwardly into public space. Tunity. As if urban planning has developed a headache and nobody can find the proper official. The city still lives, but its clean rhythm has begun to loosen. The old confidence remains visible underneath, like a fine pattern showing through worn cloth. Tunity, a mainstream historical fact, moves quietly through these signs. After about 1900 BCE, many major Indus urban centers declined, with large cities such as Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa losing population or changing character while settlements shifted. Regional cultures developed, and the mature Harappan urban system gradually gave way to more localized ways of life. This was not one instant disappearance. It was a long transformation, uneven across regions and generations. You walk past a courtyard where fewer storage jars stand than before. In another house, a room has been subdivided with rougher walls. Streets once carefully maintained show silt damage and encroachment. It is still a city, still inhabited, Tunity still breathing, but the breath is shallower. The old municipal confidence, the quiet miracle of drains and grids, seems harder to maintain. Historians still argue whether environmental change, river shifts, weakening monsoons, Tunity declining long-distance trade, social reorganization, disease, internal political change, or combinations of these pressures cause the urban decline. The honest answer is not a single falling hammer. Tunity, it is more like a roof beginning to leak in 5 places while everyone argues which bucket matters most. You follow the sound of the river and find its bank change from your memory. The water has not vanished, but channels move, banks slump, Tunity silt gathers where boats once slid more easily. Rivers do not hate cities, they simply have their own schedule, which is rude when thousands of people have built their lives around yesterday's channel. A city can command workers, traders, Tunity masons. It cannot politely ask a river to stop being dramatic. In some regions, river systems shifted or dried. In others, floods may have damaged urban neighborhoods. In still others, people adapted by moving towards smaller settlements, Tunity, different crops, or new local patterns. The Indus world was too large for one neat ending. What happens in one valley does not exactly match what happens on the coast, in Gujarat, in Punjab, or near the Gag or Hakra plains. Tunity, the civilization does not fall like a drop pot. It frays like rope under long strain. At the market, fewer foreign goods appear. The bead seller still sits under his awning, but the old sparkle of distant exchange feels dimmer. Tunity, Mesopotamian trade routes have changed. Gulf contacts shift, demand rises and falls. A merchant grumbles over cargo that has not arrived, and you sympathize. Tunity, because even in the Bronze Age, shipping delays had the power to ruin someone's personality by lunch. A quirky tidbit drifts in with the dust. Older dramatic theories imagine the Indus cities destroyed by invading armies, sudden massacres, Tunity, or mysterious catastrophes. In some fringe versions added explosions, cosmic disasters, or forgotten weapons, because apparently a slow socioeconomic transition is not cinematic enough. Modern archaeology tends to see a more complex, Tunity, gradual process, although conflict, stress, and hardship may still have touched particular communities. The past rarely collapses in a way that satisfies movie trailers. You pass a seal workshop where fewer new seals are being carved. Tunity. Perhaps administrative habits are changing. Perhaps trade networks no longer need the same marks. Perhaps people still use old seals until they wear down, because replacing official tools is annoying and someone always says the old one works fine. Tunity, the undeciphered signs remain, but their world is shifting beneath them. Homes continue to fill with ordinary life. People cook, repair, argue, sweep, laugh, and put children to bed. That is what makes decline difficult to see from inside it. Tunity, nobody wakes one morning and says, "Today we enter the late Harappan phase. Please adjust your emotional expectations." They wake and notice the well needs cleaning, the harvest looks uncertain, the cousin has moved east, the trader is late, Tunity, and the city drain is blocked again. History names the pattern later. People live the inconvenience now. You walk toward the great bath, remembering the dark water under stars. The structure still stands, but its certainty feels lonelier. Tunity, rituals may change, public authority may weaken, maintenance may falter. A tank that once gathered people in shared meaning can become an old place, then a memory, then a ruin. Tunity, and finally a famous photograph in a textbook that makes students wonder if it will be on the exam. The decline is not emptiness. Smaller settlements continue, crafts continue in altered forms. Pottery styles change. Tunity, regional traditions grow more distinct. People carry habits with them, ways of building, cooking, farming, decorating, measuring, remembering. Some elements may echo into later South Asian cultures, though direct lines are difficult to prove. Tunity, continuity and change twist together like river channels after a flood. You stand on a rooftop at dusk. The city below is not dead. It is tired. Smoke still rises. A bullock cart still creaks. Someone still curses a stubborn jar lid. Tunity, preserving the ancient dignity of household frustration. Yet beyond the walls, families are leaving, routes are shifting, fields are being reconsidered, and the old urban web no longer pulls as tightly as before. Remember that first morning, Tunity, when the fired bricks appeared through river fog and everything seemed measured, drained, and quietly invincible. Now you understand the gentler truth. Civilizations do not need to be weak to become vulnerable. Tunity, they only need enough pressures arriving slowly enough that each one feels manageable until the pattern holding everything together begins to loosen. Night comes without catastrophe, no final scream, no single last lamp, just many lamps. Tunity, fewer each season scattered across a landscape where people adapt because they must. The Indus world exhales not into nothing, but into villages, fields, migrations, memories. Tunity, and unanswered questions waiting for another age to uncover its bricks. The exhale carries you beyond the tired city, out past the walls where lamps grow fewer and the plain opens under a moon so pale it seemed to have forgotten why it came. You do not watch an ending now, you follow departures. A family loads jars onto a cart. A child clutches a clay animal with one missing horn. An old woman ties a bundle with the seriousness of someone who has moved before and knows the rope will betray everybody at the worst possible moment. Tunity, behind you, the large city still murmurs, but ahead the road is full of smaller sounds, wheels and dust, cattle bells, sandal scraping, babies complaining about Bronze Age travel conditions with excellent accuracy. People do not vanish. They relocate, adapt, marry into new communities, change pottery styles, grow different crops, and become extremely difficult for archaeologists to label neatly. A mainstream historical fact walks beside you on the road. Tunity. After the decline of the major urban centers, many communities continued across the broader Indus region and beyond in what archaeologists call the late Harappan period, with settlement patterns shifting eastward and southward in some areas. Tunity, especially toward the upper Ganges Yamuna region, Gujarat, Rajasthan, and other zones, urban life changed, but human life did not stop. The civilization's great cities dimmed, while people carried practices into new landscapes. Tunity, you move with one group at dawn. The cart creaks under storage jars, grinding stones, tools, cloth, and the emotional weight of every household object nobody wants to leave behind. Tunity, someone has packed a broken pot, just in case, proving that the ancient world also had junk drawers. A goat tied behind the cart resists progress by leaning sideways, a political statement no one supports. The land changes slowly. Brick gives way to mud walls, clustered houses, temporary shelters, fields near smaller streams, and villages that feel less monumental but more flexible. You notice familiar things surviving in altered form, pottery shapes, beads, bangles. Tunity. Ways of cooking grain, cattle management, perhaps memories of old cities told as places where streets were straight and drains behaved better than some relatives. Tunity. Historians still argue whether there was strong cultural continuity between the Indus civilization and later South Asian traditions, and if so, which elements continued directly, which transformed. Tunity, and which are only tempting similarities created by distance. The debate is delicate because objects can resemble one another without proving a straight line. A symbol can survive, change meaning, or vanish and then appear again by coincidence. Tunity, like a family recipe, nobody can agree came from which grandmother. In one smaller settlement, you see pottery with styles different from the older urban standard. The world has become regional. The old Indus unity, visible in shared weights, seals Tunity. Bricks and city planning loosens into local experiments. That does not mean decline into stupidity, as some older histories implied with astonishing confidence and very little manners. Tunity, it means people are solving different problems in different places. A farmer shows you a field of millet, like crops suited to drier conditions. In some regions, communities may have diversified agriculture, relying more on drought-resistant crops as climate patterns changed. Wheat and barley fed cities, but smaller communities under uncertain rainfall may need other strategies. The dinner menu becomes climate adaptation. Tunity, which sounds fancy until someone reminds you the goats have eaten half the evidence. You pass through Gujarat in imagination, where late Harappan communities continue near coastlands and trade routes, though in altered form. Tunity, some craft traditions remain. Shell work still matters, beads still gleam, pottery changes but hands still shape clay. The sea does not forget the people who learned to read tides, even if the old trade with Mesopotamia has weakened. Tunity. A quirky tidbit follows along the road like a rumor with dusty sandals. Some fringe theories claim the Indus people became the direct founders of every later Indian tradition. Tunity, while other dramatic versions imagine them as refugees from a lost utopia carrying secret sciences into hidden valleys. The real story is more interesting and less obedient. Later cultures in South Asia developed through many streams of migration. Tunity, interaction, local growth, continuity, and change. The Indus people were part of that deep human landscape, not a single magic key that unlocks everything. You sit beside a cooking fire in a village far from Mohenjo-Daro. Tunity, the night air smells of lentils, smoke, cattle, and damp earth. Someone tells a story in a language you cannot understand, but you feel its rhythm, a river that moved, a city that was left, a dangerous animal, a foolish trader, a clever child. Tunity, perhaps none of it is history in the tidy sense, perhaps all of it is. The people around you do not call themselves vanished, they are busy being alive. A woman repairs a basket, a man checks a plow. Children argue over the broken clay animal, one insisting it is a bull, another declaring it a monster, because children understand mythology as a legal right. No one pauses to mourn the end of a civilization. Tunity. That phrase belongs to later observers staring at maps and pottery charts. Here, life narrows, changes, survives. You think of the unread seals. In the great cities, symbols once marked goods and identities. Here, fewer seals appear. Tunity, writing habits may fade or transform beyond recognition. Administration no longer needs the same machinery when communities are smaller and networks less centralized. Losing writing does not mean losing memory. Memory can sit in song, kinship, tunity, ritual, craft, field boundaries, and the stubborn way someone shapes a pot because this is how it is done. The road continues eastward under stars. Every settlement you pass complicates the word lost. Lost to whom? Lost when? So not to the people walking, cooking, planting, marrying, grieving, and arguing about livestock. The great urban pattern is lost, yes, the script becomes unreadable. The cities sink into dust. But the humans continue. Tunity, and with them go gestures too small for monuments, how to drill a bid, how to build a hearth, when to sow, how to bless water. By dawn you look back and see no city on the horizon. Only smoke threads rising from scattered villages and fields. Tunity. The Indus world has not disappeared like a candle blown out. It has become embers carried in many hands, some glowing, some fading, some mixing with other fires until no one can separate the original flame, Tunity. And maybe that is why the civilization feels so haunting. It is lost not because everyone died, but because life went on without leaving you the neat explanation you wanted. The embers carried in many hands fade into morning, and then time begins to move faster than footsteps. Villages rise and fall. Rivers wander, languages change. Kingdoms arrive, build capitals, write praise, and leave ruins. Tunity. Dust gathers over the old brick cities until their straight streets become mounds, their drains become buried lines, and their seals sleep under soil with all the patience of objects that know humans will eventually come back confused. You stand centuries later on a hot plain under a colonial sun, no longer among Harappan families moving eastward with carts, but beside railway builders, surveyors, and laborers squinting at mounds without yet understanding what they are. The air smells of dry earth, iron tools, and camel sweat. A railway line is being pushed across Punjab, and old bricks are being dug out of the mounds for ballast beneath the tracks. A mainstream historical fact sits painfully in that scene. Tunity. In the 19th century, bricks from the ancient site of Harappa were used during railway construction before their true age was understood. Imagine surviving 4,000 years just to become support material for a train. It is practical, Tunity, tragic, and somehow very human, like steadying a wobbly table with a priceless manuscript. You watch workers pry bricks from the mound. They do not know they are dismantling part of one of the world's great Bronze Age civilizations. To them, the bricks are useful. To local people, the mounds may be old, strange, perhaps tied to stories, treasure, spirits, or forgotten kings. To early officials, they are curiosities in a land crowded with better-known monuments. Tunity. The name Harappa begins to rise in reports before its meaning is understood. Mohenjo-Daro, far to the south in Sindh, waits too. Tunity. Its later name often translated as Mound of the Dead Men, which is wonderfully dramatic and absolutely the kind of name that makes documentary music start misbehaving. It was not what the ancient inhabitants called the city, Tunity. Their real name is gone, tucked behind undeciphered signs, very on brand. You move forward again into the early 20th century when archaeology begins brushing more carefully. Archaeological Survey of India workers uncover structures, seals, Tunity, streets, and bricks that do not fit the familiar story. Excavations at Harappa under Dea Ramsani and at Mohenjo-Daro under R.D. Banerjee help reveal that these mounds are not minor leftovers. Tunity. They belong to a civilization older and larger than expected. In 1904, John Marshall announces to the world that a major ancient civilization had been discovered in the Indus region, contemporary with Egypt and Mesopotamia. Tunity. You stand beside a trench as soil is lifted away from a wall. Brick after brick appears in lines too regular to dismiss. A drain emerges, then another. A seal is cleaned, showing an animal and small signs nobody can read. Tunity. The old city returns, not with a shout, but with measurements, brushes, baskets, notebooks, and someone saying, "Careful with that, 3 seconds too late." Tunity. Historians still argue whether early colonial frameworks distorted the first interpretations of the Indus civilization, emphasizing certain comparisons with Mesopotamia, searching for kings and temples. Tunity. Or treating South Asia's ancient past through assumptions brought from outside. The discoveries were real and transformative, but the lens mattered. Archaeology does not happen in a vacuum. It happens in offices, empires, languages, Tunity, funding systems, rivalries, and hats. The realization is enormous. South Asia's deep urban past is not a footnote after Mesopotamia or a background before later kingdoms. Here is a civilization with planned cities, standardized bricks, seals, Tunity, weights, craft networks, long-distance trade, and water systems that make modern people suddenly interested in drains against their will. Remember that covered drain you almost saluted? It returns now as evidence, no longer ordinary infrastructure, Tunity, but a clue able to reorder history. At Mohenjo-Daro, excavation reveals the Great Bath streets, wells, houses, platforms, and layers of occupation. At Harappa, broken mounds yield seals, pottery, walls, and traces of urban life. Tunity. The puzzle grows wider as more sites are found across a vast region. What first seemed like isolated ruins becomes a civilization spread across hundreds of settlements. The lost world is not one city, Tunity. It is a whole cultural horizon waking under dust. A quirky tidbit drifts around the excavation camp, early visitors, local rumors, and later fringe writers wrap the sites in tales of curses, hidden treasure, vanished races, sudden doom, Tunity, and mysterious powers. Some dramatic stories were encouraged by the name Mound of the Dead Men because apparently no one can resist turning that volume up. The reality is quieter but more powerful. Tunity. Careful excavation revealed a civilization missed because its script was silent and its monuments did not behave as expected. You watch a seal placed into a tray. The little unicorn like animal stares up again, unchanged by empires and trains. Tunity. The signs above it remain unread. Nearby, a worker brushes soil from a toy cart, and suddenly Section 8 seems to breathe again. The child in the courtyard, the clay wheels, the little imagined road. Tunity. Archaeology collapses time in uncomfortable ways. One moment you are in a trench. The next you feel someone's hand shaping a toy for a child who never knew. Harappan. Mistakes happen too. Tunity. Early excavation methods sometimes removed layers too quickly by modern standards. Context and interpretations shifted. Archaeology, like every human activity, improves partly by looking back and whispering. Well, Tunity, we would not do that now, which is also what people say about old haircuts. By evening, the trench fills with long shadows. The railway line lies somewhere beyond proof of damage and discovery tangled together. Tunity. Tunity, the bricks that survived under trains and fields have forced a new timeline into view. The Indus civilization is no longer only a sleeping mound. It has become an intellectual disturbance, a correction to old assumptions. Tunity, a reminder that Earth can hide whole urban worlds beneath ordinary dust. You stand at the edge of the excavation as lamps are lit. The past has returned, but not completely. It offers brick, seal, bead, drain, bath, toy, bone, pot, and platform. Tunity. It withholds names, songs, laws, prayers, and explanations. Rediscovery has not solved the mystery. It has only made the mystery visible enough to keep you walking back toward the river, where one last set of echoes waits under the sleeping plain. The river waits where rediscovery leaves you, wide in memory, even when its channels shift, even when maps disagree, even when dust and politics and scholarship argue over its old paths. Tunity, you return to the bank not as the first traveler who entered through morning fog, but as someone who has carried the city through workshops, fields, boats, baths, markets, homes, and ruins. The plain is quiet now. Tunity, archaeologists have packed their tools. The railway has already taken what it took. The buried bricks have spoken as much as they can without learning your language. You stand near the water at dusk. Reeds move along the edge. Tunity. The air smells of mud, dry grass, and the faint mineral coolness that rises after heat leaves the ground. Far away, a bird calls once, then decides that is enough public speaking for the evening. Sensible bird. Better disciplined than most comment sections. A mainstream historical fact settles under the fading sky. The Indus Valley civilization was one of the largest Bronze Age civilizations. Tunity, covering a vast region with major urban centers like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro and many smaller settlements linked by shared material, culture, craft traditions, weights, seals, and urban habits. It was not a footnote, it was a world, Tunity, wide and coordinated, whose achievements were built less on giant royal monuments and more on systems that worked quietly: bricks, drains, wells, streets, measures, trade, farming, and water. Tunity, you think back to the first fired brick wall glowing through fog? At the time, it seemed simply neat, almost polite. Now it feels like an argument made in clay that people here valued regularity, durability, and cooperation. The brick ratio. Tunity, the covered drains, the neighborhood wells, the inward-facing houses, the careful seals, the glowing beads. Each object says, in its own unrateable way, we knew how to live together at scale. And yet, the riverbank is full of missing things. No known king steps forward. No decoded poem names the moon over Mohenjo-Daro. No surviving letter complains that the Bade shipment is late, though you know in your heart somebody complained. Tunity, the script remains locked. The seals stare. The unicorn stands forever before its strange object, professionally unhelpful. The horned figure sits in stillness, neither confirming nor denying anyone's theory. Tunity, ancient mystery, has excellent legal representation. Historians still argue whether the Indus civilization was governed by centralized rulers, merchant elites, ritual authorities, councils, or multiple regional systems that shifted over time. Tunity, they still argue whether the script records language in a full writing system. They still argue how climate, rivers, trade, and society combined to reshape the civilization's end. The honest scholarly landscape is not a single answer, Tunity, but a series of careful questions placed beside brick, bone, pottery, pollen, and soil. You kneel and let your fingers hover above the damp earth. The river's presence feels ancient, but never fixed. That is the lesson the Indus keeps giving you. Stability is made, not granted. Cities require work. Drains must be cleaned, wells maintained, fields planted, weights trusted, seals recognized, boats launched. Children fed, walls repaired. Tunity, nobody gets civilization as a permanent subscription with automatic renewal. Someone has to keep paying in effort. A quirky tidbit drifts across the twilight. Fringe theories continue to dress the Indus in many costumes. Lost empire. Tunity, vanished priesthood, secret yoga homeland, Atlantica's an ancient super science society, or civilization destroyed by spectacular catastrophe. The ruins invite imagination because they withhold explanation, Tunity, but their real wonder does not need exaggeration. A civilization can be astonishing without lasers, curses, or a dramatic narrator whispering forbidden knowledge every 9 seconds. You listen to the water and hear the earlier sections returning softly. The great bath reflects a darkening sky. The market balances weights under lamplight. A Meluhan trader waits for an interpreter in a distant port. Tunity, a farmer watches monsoon clouds. A shell worker cuts pale bangles from the memory of the sea. A child pushes a terracotta cart across a courtyard, inventing a city within the city. Remember that almost saluted drain, the ancient shipping delays. Tunity, the goat with political opinions. They all belong here too, because history is not only what survives in museums, it is also what makes the dead feel alive enough to be mildly inconvenient. The Indus civilization is called lost, Tunity, but the word is imperfect. Lost suggests a thing misplaced whole, like keys under a cushion. This was not that. The cities changed, people moved. Traditions transformed. Some habits may have faded, Tunity, others may have flowed into later lives in ways archaeology can glimpse only dimly. The urban pattern was lost, the script was lost, names were lost. Tunity, but people did not evaporate from the plain like mist performing a magic trick for easily impressed tourists. You rise as the light thins. The river's surface darkens. Somewhere beneath layers of silt and time, more walls may wait, more seals, Tunity, more beads, more broken toys. Perhaps someday a bilingual inscription will appear and scholars will collectively make a noise so undignified that several university buildings will need to look away. Tunity, perhaps the script will remain unread for centuries more. The Indus is patient. It has already waited longer than most human certainties survive. You look one last time toward where Mohenjo-Daro stands in memory, not dead, not restored, but held in that strange middle space where ruins become companions. Its streets no longer carry morning traffic, yet their lines remain. Its drains no longer run with household water, yet they still carry proof of planning. Its seals no longer authorize trade, yet they still press meaning into your imagination. Its great bath no longer gathers its people, yet the idea of water held carefully in brick still cools the mind. The night comes down gently now. The plain loses its edges, the river becomes sound before shape, a slow movement beyond reeds. You understand that the Indus world is not asking to be solved like a puzzle on a kitchen table. It asks to be approached with humility, curiosity, and enough patience to let quiet achievements matter. It asks you to admire the people whose names you cannot know, because they built cities where water moved, trade worked, crafts shone, and private courtyards held the warm, ordinary weight of human days. Her word count 198, and now the river grows softer, and the old bricks settle back into the dark, no longer asking anything sharp from you. The questions remain, but they no longer need to be chased. They can rest where they are, among reeds, moonlit dust, and the long-breathing silence of the plain. You let the city recede slowly. First the markets fade, then the wells, then the courtyards, then the bead-maker's lamp glowing like one small star held close to the earth. The great bath becomes a dark mirror. The toy cart stops rolling. The seals close their tiny animal eyes. If stone animals can be allowed such kindness for one quiet minute. The river keeps moving, but gently now, not as a force that shifts channels and changes histories, but as a low and steady hush beneath the night. You are safe here. Far from the heat, the work, the unanswered signs, and the long roads into dust. You have walked through a lost world and returned with nothing heavy to carry, only the faint warmth of fired brick, the smell of rain on old clay. And the soft thought that human lives can vanish from record while their care remains. So let the Indus plain dim, let the reeds blur, let the stars lower themselves into the water one by one. Somewhere under the sleeping river, the old civilization keeps its silence, not empty, not lonely, just quiet, as if it has finally said enough for tonight.